As a nation of immigrants, we must abide by the words on our Statue of Liberty, "Give us your tired and your poor."
Sometimes these days that sounds like empty rhetoric.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Hello, viewers. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Andrea Luxton. I am the president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan. And I would like you to meet our panelists for today.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ.
Hi, I'm Dan Levin. I serve as senior rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
My name is Mel Robeck. I'm senior professor of church history and ecumenics at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California, where I also serve the president as special assistant for ecumenical relations. I'm an Assemblies of God minister.
Today's topic takes us back to something we seem to have been discussing many times over the last couple of years, but it doesn't seem to go away. So here is the topic. Toward the end of the past year, it seemed possible to some that Congress might do something about some aspects of immigration. Yet at Christmas, there was a stalemate over Title 42 that bars immigrants from crossing the Mexican border. Presidents and courts cannot agree. Meanwhile, while the National Guard kept asylum seekers from Latin America out of Texas, the outgoing governor is removing the freight containers that he put up to guard the Arizona border under legal duress. Thousands of migrants waited patiently in the cold along the Rio Grande to enter the United States. And children, thousands of them now adults, have spent years in the U.S. protected for the moment by the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA program. We have lots to talk about immigration. We've done so before, but the situation seems only to worsen. Immigration reform continues to be held hostage. So we would like our panelists to puzzle again on this program for a few moments. Is it realistic to believe that Congress could pass any sort of immigration legislation in the foreseeable future? What do you believe are the top 2 or 3 reasons that you see for the current impasse, and how might they be overcome? And finally, how can the people of our religious community help to bring change to the current issue? Let's return to those that gave us our cliffhangers to start our conversation. Rabbi.
It's wonderful to see everybody today, and it's frustrating that we have to keep revisiting this topic because there hasn't been any meaningful progress. In our tradition, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Torah, mention the commandment to love and care for the stranger 36 different times. There is the famous adage that says you have to have one law for you and the stranger. And while America is a nation of immigrants, there is an amazing thread in American history of nativism and populism and chauvinism that has time and time again made our borders very difficult to access. I was recently watching the famous and incredibly well-done documentary by Ken Burns on the Holocaust and on how America chose to act during that dark and difficult time. And he starts off the documentary telling the very well-known story of Anne Frank. Now, most of us know Anne Frank through the diary that was published of her life as a young girl hiding from the Nazis in Amsterdam. But what is not told in the diary, but is told in the documentary, is the incredible lengths to which her father, Otto Frank, sought to get refuge in the United States. And he dotted his I's and he crossed his T's. He was a prosperous person. There was no wonderment about whether he would be a public charge, and still he couldn't get in. If America had had different immigration policies then, Anne Frank might be sitting with us on this panel. And I think that when we look at the desperate situation that so many people from across the globe are fleeing to try to gain access to the American dream that, frankly, all of us sometimes take for granted, we have to look and ask ourselves if we're really behaving as a nation in concert with our values. You know, I'm reminded that Abraham's tent was open on all sides because he was consciously, actively looking to find ways to welcome the stranger. And we not only close our tent flaps, but we put up very strong iron gates and barbed wire to ensure that we keep the stranger out. And I think all of us, right, left, and center, have to ask ourselves, is this really in keeping with our values as individuals, as values as people of faith, as the values of the nation that was built through immigration?
Tom?
Thank you. I want to center my thoughts around a couple of the questions that you asked after your moderator's statement. The first is whether we believe there's any realistic hope for immigration legislation in the foreseeable future, and I think the easy answer to that one is absolutely not. If we could not get any immigration legislation through Congress where people would actually talk to each other, why would we expect to get legislation through this Congress? Because they are acting in such a childish manner that I don't see any hope for anything real and substantive to come out of it. Meanwhile, thousands suffer. Thousands who could be contributing members of this society and who are needed in our labor force suffer. The other question that I would like to address is the last one that you asked us, which is about how individual faith communities on the local level can have any impact on the immigration issue. And I think the best answer to that one is that we need to encourage our faith communities to have fact-based conversations, but to have them based in fact. One of the problems with this current wave of nativism that we have, white supremacy that we have moving through our country, is that it tends to carry along with it a whole series of misinformation and flat-out prevarication, lies. For instance, it is not true that our borders are out of control. Okay, there are problems at our borders, and from time to time there are great buildups of people at our borders. It is not true, however, that they are out of control. It is also not true that immigrants coming into this country are primarily criminals. That's this fear-mongering. It is also not true that immigrants take jobs away from American workers. Study after study after study over decades has shown that immigrants, in fact, contribute to the economy, create more jobs, actually, for American workers because of the things that they do by starting businesses and contributing in ways that they know that they must do in order to be here. So let's have conversations that ignore the fear-mongering and deal in facts. I think that's a way for us to get started.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, again, this is a difficult issue because it keeps coming up time and time again, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it. The fact of the matter is that we are a nation of immigrants. I benefit from the fact that my mother's family came over here in the late 1600s, and my father's family came in here about 1890, and 1885, and I have benefited as an immigrant. A lot of people have come as immigrants. Some of them were forced to become immigrants because of slavery. Others of us came freely. But suddenly the doors are shut. Now, the doors have been shut time and again for different reasons, sometimes against the Irish, sometimes against the people from the Southern Europe, sometimes against Chinese and Japanese, as we know in California, where we had many years in which immigration was absolutely at a standstill. And then, of course, we've had questions about people coming who are Muslim, So all of these kinds of issues keep being raised. But the reality is we've been unable or unwilling to face them. And I agree with both of you. I think that fear is a huge issue here, and the politicians know exactly how to press that. They've turned these so-called facts into reality and said, this is what's happening and this is what's going to happen if we do that. But one of the things I think that is happening also that never gets addressed is when these people come and if they become citizens, how are they going to vote? They're not going to vote for my party. They're going to vote for your party. They're going to take where do the poor go? They go to this particular party most of the time, and they certainly don't go to this other party. So I think that's an issue that's going to be with us as long as we have this division and the unwillingness to work together to find a reality where we can all benefit. Absolutely, our economy needs these kinds of people, and it's also the case, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people have been waiting to get in and cannot get in. And we just keep standing there and saying, well, we can work on it. Next administration. That's the way we do it. We kick the ball down the road. I have to ask myself the question, are we our brothers or sisters' keeper? Are we ever? What does it mean for we as Christians to love our neighbors as ourselves, neighbors being defined as anybody other than me? What is that? What's that about? How are we supposed to respond to the acts of injustice and racism and violence and war that's going on in all of these, for instance, in Central America, where you have all of these kinds of things going on, and people trying to get in, and yet we're willing to send billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. Why? They're Caucasian.
So maybe I could push this a little bit too, because I think this is an excellent conversation, and I think we've talked about some of the most significant barriers, fear-mongering, and probably behind that as well, the whole political situation. I mean, there's all kinds of hurdles that get in the way. There's also the real versus the ideal too. I mean, the ideal is the position we've heard, Let's open our doors, let's let the neighbors come in, let's deal with the poverty, yet there is a capacity, right, with what can be dealt with and how much can be done.
Yep.
So between all of that mix of the real, the ideal, and those barriers, do we have any solutions? What can we do?
I think part of the solution is that we need to realize that how we welcome immigrants and help asylum seekers and refugees needs not to be a localized problem, it's a national problem.
Yeah.
So there were horrible political stunts that were done by Governor DeSantis and the governor of Texas to draw attention to the fact that as border states like Texas and Florida and others, they bear a disproportionate burden of what do you do when these people cross the border.
Yeah.
What they did by putting them on a plane and dropping them off in Martha's Vineyard, or God forbid, on Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
dropping off in the dead of night in the cold of Washington, D.C., outside the Naval Observatory. Thank God for faith-based institutions that help to care for those people when they arrive with almost no warning or notice.
Yep.
At the same time, it's not really fair that Florida or Texas or other border states have to bear the disproportionate burden of what happens when these people come across the border. It should be a national priority for us to be able to provide aid and to help those people make their way to wherever their future homes will be across the United States. But the fact is that we are a better nation than the way we've been behaving around this. You know, we have gone from a time when we expect our politicians to promote policies, and instead we ask them to be cheerleaders for our tribe. And the tribalism that has infected our politics from right versus left has made it almost impossible for us to take a look at what would be the right policy decisions. And I think that because we have lost sight of the values question, we have allowed ourselves to do incomprehensibly evil things, where in the previous administration there was a deliberate policy to separate children from their parents, hundreds of whom have not yet been returned to their parents because they got lost in our system. We have to make sure that what we do in the promotion of policies is in line with our values, and we need to hold politicians to account that they work on policy, not just on riling up the tribe that they want to create for their base.
And does anyone have a solution how you change the politicians' minds so they reframe things?
Well, I'm not sure you're going to change politicians' minds, at least the ones that are currently in office. Maybe what we need to do is vote them all out. I mean, that's really extreme, and I don't really believe that. But I do think that some people, especially those that are leading against immigration reform, we need to take a second look at them. And I think that faith-based organizations or people that are associated with them need to take a very strong look at that kind of issue. I do think that we are a nation of limited resources, and we need to be careful. We need to have an orderly immigration policy. But until our politicians stop playing politics, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, and it needs to be a policy that's not based on race.
True.
Or that
Or
is
religion.
less, or that is less based on race and religion than it has been.
Yep.
Because you know, as long as you came in through Ellis Island, that was a very different thing than coming in through San Francisco in the 19th century,
Right.
And early 20th century. So, you know, yes, the ballot box is the place where a lot of this has to change. But we have to start hearing somebody who wants to stand up and actually do some work.
As I listen to this conversation, it seems to me that we're getting to something that maybe we've discussed in different ways on this show before, which is what is the heart of the United States, right? Not the politics, but what do we really, really stand for, the values at the core. I mean, we've got a constitution. Have we so far moved from the essence of the constitution? Has politics taken over and prevented us looking at what we are, who we truly are as a nation? Is that what our problem is? This is something about politics and playing games rather than actually about the people and the real issue and who we are as a nation. I don't know. That's just something for us to think about as we move forward. And you know, I'm an immigrant. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I am an immigrant, but I'm one of the ones that, you know, it wasn't that hard. And it's kind of embarrassing. It's not like that for everyone. Let's take a break.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
Welcome back, viewers, and please know that we are here. We do want to hear from you. We see you as part of our program, not just observers, but actually active part of who we are. We hope that maybe you continue the dialogues after we finish. But please send us your ideas, send us your comments and your prayer requests. Thank you. We're now moving into our closing comments. Tom, let's start with you.
Yeah, I just want to underline the statement that has already been made that this is a national problem. It's not a regional problem. It's not a problem of individual states. It is a national problem. And I think studies have shown, surveys have shown that the American people are far wiser and more caring than so many of those, not everybody, but so many of those who represent them in Congress. And I think that again and again in American history, despite these urges toward racism and nativism and xenophobia, that we continue to overcome those tendencies with these very religious understandings of love of neighbor and caring for the least of these, and looking at every person that comes our way as someone who bears the image of God.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I really struggle with this because we didn't take seriously Native American people when we started immigrating into this country, and we have pushed them and pushed them and pushed them. And now, of course, the latest is how are the Native Americans in Arizona, for instance, going to get water in this water rights dispute between California and the rest of the western states? I don't know whether they'll be left out or they'll be counted as part of that discussion. But it seems to me that that's really indicative of the way we have treated not only indigenous people, but people that have come in from afar. And we've always had this kind of discriminatory side to the next group that comes in, that's different from us, It's also the case that I struggle a great deal, especially with these young people in the DACA program who were brought here often with no choice of their own. It was made for them by other people, and were unwilling to settle that dispute and to find a place for them and make it possible for them to be immigrants. Again, I think it's based upon fear, and I also think it's based upon power and who wants to have the final say in all of that. So I really struggle with this. I think that we do need new immigration rules, and the only way we're going to get that is to bring in new people with new ideas about how to implement them.
Thank you.
So there are so many Americans who were brought here against their will in chains.
Yep.
But there are also so many who came to America because they wanted a better life, because they wanted to escape tyranny and persecution and to avail themselves of the unique and, I would dare say, even holy freedoms that are the bedrock of this nation. Now, I remember a couple of years ago, we were redoing our kitchen and the cabinet installer was there, and he was just so happy when he came to work on Monday, and I said, "How was your weekend?" And he said, "This last weekend was the best weekend of my life except from the wedding and the birth of my children." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I became an American citizen." Mm-hmm. For him, that was as magnificent a day. He said, "This is the greatest country in the world." He had come from Argentina, and he was so excited to become an American citizen. He put it up there with the joy of his wedding and the birth of his children. The fact is that people come to the United States for so many different reasons. They come here to avail themselves of the incredible universities and colleges and opportunities for higher education. They come here because they want to actualize their religious freedom. They come here because they want to offer their children and generations they'll never know an opportunity for prosperity as far as their dreams and their hard work and determination will take them, which is the reason why my family came to the United States as well. And so I think we are a better nation when we open our hand and when we open our hearts and when we open our doors. Jewish tradition says, indeed, you must guard your borders and you must, as you said, have an orderly process by which you bring people in. But I think about how many lives were lost. I think about how many stories will never be told because America wouldn't open its doors. And we should not do that mistake again.
Thank you very much. Really important conversation again today. Being at a university where we have students coming, going all the time, we have students from Dhaka, we have international students that come in. And interestingly, over recent years, we have found ourselves hiring outside the United States on many occasions. I think that's the other side of this. People come to America for what America can give to them. But actually, many of our immigrants come to give things to America that makes America a much richer place. They're actually coming with that capacity to strengthen who America is. And I think it's very short-sighted when the view is always that they are the other, rather than actually someone that's potentially part of making us better. Mm-hmm. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American rights to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And so now, friends, until next week, at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.